All right, what is going on? Had a couple or a little bit of technical difficulties there, but we are back. I'm still learning this whole live streaming thing. But welcome to episode 6 of Asset Creators. Today, we're going to be covering my 3 biggest lessons after making my first 100K online in 2024 as a solopreneur. So that was a big year for me. I'm going to go into my story a little bit, what I kind of learned in this whole process of making my first 100K
what's going on?
and sharing that with you so you can learn from it, hopefully avoid some of the mistakes I made and apply these lessons. So yeah, let's get right into today's video. So I wanted to start this episode with just going over my first 100K online, just telling the short story really quickly about how it kind of happened and how it all went down. So I discovered online business in 2022 when I was in school for audio engineering full time. And while I was in school, one of my professors, you may know him if you're in the writing space online. His name is Talon Simmons. He was ghostwriting. And what happened was Talon ended up leaving his position as a teacher there because he was making so much money online and it just wasn't, it didn't make sense for him to stay teaching anymore. And so that was my first time of seeing, there's this online space and holy, you can make money, and seeing somebody actually do it successfully. So I was still in school, so of course I couldn't just go full time. So I graduated the next year, and then I started copywriting. I also did some ghostwriting for an agency as well, but what I first started was copywriting. It's a whole nother story. I could do a whole nother video on that, but I was on sites like Upwork, and I was doing the whole thing. But I ended up transitioning into ghostwriting for an agency, and that was great. That's when I really kind of was honing my skills on content and making my first real money online after I graduated school. So then what I ended up doing the year after that was I had already had a full year under my belt. And then in 2024, I hit my first 100K consulting for content and lead funnels. So after I did the ghostwriting thing and the copywriting thing for about a year and a half, I got pretty good, at least, in my own eyes. I felt that I was pretty good. And so what I ended up doing was helping people because people were DMing me and people were just asking me, like, can you help me? How do you write content? How do you get leads? Like, how can you actually get people from content to clients? And I was kind of figuring it out as I was going too, but I had some success because I was making money. And so I ended up consulting and teaching people how to do it, what I was already doing. And that was the year in 2024 that I hit my first 100K. And all through LinkedIn, all organic. It was really cool. And that was obviously very eye-opening for me. And as part of my journey as a solopreneur, realizing, holy crap, this is real. And out of college, there was no way, out of audio engineering school, there was no way that I was going to make that kind of money. So really eye-opening for me, really big lesson for me. There's a lot I'm kind of glancing or glazing over there, in terms of the story, but I just want you to know that that's kind of how I found it, how I got started, and then what I ended up doing to hit my first 100K. And that was it back in 2024. So of course, along the way, I learned a bunch of lessons. I made a lot of mistakes, things like that. I'm going to share the 3 biggest lessons. I really took my time when I was sitting down, when I was doing this and coming up with these lessons, because it was actually really a really reflective experience for me to try to figure out what were those lessons? What were those things that I can share with people who are where I was and where want to go where I did to make their first 100K. And I wanted them to just not be trite or little platitudes or something. These are real lessons that part of my journey. And I'm going to share stories with each one about how I learned it and what happened. So we're going to start with lesson 1. So lesson 1 was I could charge more than I thought. This was really big for me because I was drastically and massively underselling my services, especially when I first started consulting and getting into the coaching space. I had an offer. It was a pack of 4 calls, and I originally started selling it for $500, which is fine. I was getting started, makes sense, but I stayed there way too long, and I eventually did up it to 1K, as you will see, but I stayed there for too long as well. So what happened was I joined a coaching program where on my very first call with the guy who was running the program, he asked me what my close rate was, and I was tracking it. I had a little Notion database where I was tracking all my numbers. And so my close rate was over 60%, okay? And at the time, keep in mind, this is my first or going into my second year full-time as a solopreneur. I didn't know much. I was still learning a lot. And so I was thinking, I'm awesome. 60%. Like, I thought it was so cool, and I was kind of bragging to him when I said it. But he was like, whoa, dude, 60%? Like, that's not good. Like, you need to be charging more. If you're closing that high, it means your price is too low. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's absolutely right. Like, if everyone's saying yes, it's because it's clearly the price is too low. And that was really eye-opening moment for me. So what I ended up doing was I upped it to 4K. So it was at 1K, like I was saying. I was stuck at 1K for too long. And so I upped it to 4K. And then on my very next sales call, I closed. So literally 4x'd my revenue, my income, my offer, and I closed the very next call. I changed nothing. I didn't change the offer. I didn't change anything. And boom, I 4x'd it. So this was the first lesson for me was, holy, I am drastically undercharging and I can charge way more than I thought that I could. And chances are, if you're a solopreneur and you're watching this and you have not made your first 100K, this is probably the case. Of course, there's going to be skill gaps and things like that. I mean, there's so much nuance to this, but in general, from all the clients who come to me and people I work with, this seems to be the case way more often than not. So that's why I wanted to share it today, because this, I still remember the moment when he told me on the call, like 60% is way too high. Like, what do you, but it was good. It was a really big moment for me. So that was the first lesson, was I could charge more than I thought. Lesson 2, investing versus spending. So this was a big mindset shift for me, really, was realizing that there's a difference between spending money to make money or investing money to make money, right? And so I didn't really know the difference. So when I first got in the online space, I viewed software, coaching, courses as expenses, like when I first got into the game. So no word of a lie, I remember when I was Beehive, I wrote my first newsletter on Beehive. It's a platform that does like email marketing and newsletters. And so I remember like sitting there for days thinking about if I could pay the $100 a month, because of course I was new and I wasn't making that much money. So of course it was expensive for me at the time. And I just remember sitting there and I just was thinking about it, stressing about it. And then I remember I was talking to somebody, because I was in a group coaching program at the time, a mastermind or whatever. And they were all just like talking about opportunity costs, right? Okay, well, how much money are you missing out on if you don't get this platform, or you don't start writing a newsletter and email marketing and all this stuff? And then I was like, oh, damn, I never thought about that. And so that's what I did. I ended up getting it. Of course, I've made way more money than that through email marketing over the years, but that was a big moment for me. I really viewed it as an expense, not, oh my, how much can this make me? I was viewing it, how much this costs, right? And so coaching as well, courses, all of those things, even books. Books are, cheaper or less money, but, they're still I viewed them as their money. I'm spending money, right? So then what I did was, because I was in some of these groups and I started learning from all these people who were ahead of me, and I learned to start seeing these things as investments, right? Because other people who were successful for me had taken coaching. They had all invested in courses. They had all were reading books. They were paying for the software they needed. And when you look at any company, even not in the online space, but they're all going to be spending money on overhead, on, there's things that it costs to run a business. So software is just part of that. And so now, as I've gotten, more experience, more into the business, in online business, I always just ask myself, how much will I make from this versus how much does it cost? So my whole mindset and just the way I view the world is from investments versus like, how much am I going to make from this? Not how much does it cost? So I really wanted to share that because that was so big for me. I started buying software, I started investing into coaching, I started doing all these things, and it really took me off. So as you can probably tell, the reason I'm putting this lesson in here for this year of 2024 was the guy I was just talking about in lesson 1 who told me I was charging too low. That was in 2024. The first coaching I ever invested in was that year. And 3 months later was when I hit my first 10K month, was after that coaching program, right? So think about it. However much I spent on that, I made way more over the long term. So just something to really keep in mind, a big lesson that I wanted to share with you. And then the third lesson is going to be, you'll never feel 100% ready, so act now. Now, I know this is fairly common advice. You may have heard this a million times, but it was the biggest lesson for me this year because at least I didn't feel like I was super skilled. Yes, I was studying copywriting. I was handwriting copy every day. I was writing content every day. I was writing for the agency. So I was writing a lot. I felt good, but I still was like, am I ready to teach people? Am I good enough to? And all I was doing was waiting, right? Because you're never going to feel ready. And so I wouldn't be honest if I didn't include this, because this was the reason I was able to, in my second year, make 100K, was because I just took action, massive action. So waiting for the right time is BS, right? I have a lot of my clients like, oh, I'm going to wait to do this after this. And I'll be like, no, let's pick a deadline now. We're going to do it here. Because waiting for the right time, or waiting in general, is BS, right? Waiting until you're good enough is BS. Like I just told you, I just shipped it. I wasn't 100% confident that, of course, it's pretty hard to be the best in the world at anything, but at least I didn't feel even good enough to teach it. I wasn't sure, but I still did it anyway. And not like, I could still be here right now telling you guys how I didn't go for that. Or it could be 3-4 years later and I maybe still didn't think I was good enough, right? I still know to this day how much more I need to learn. And, it humbles me. Like I have so much more to learn. And so not being good enough is never going to end in terms, keep in mind, when I say not being good enough, I'm not talking about like a self-worth thing. You can watch yesterday's episode for that. But what I mean is I didn't believe my skills were good enough, not my worth or anything like that. And then also waiting in general is just BS. I've covered that already. So fail fast, learn quick, experiment while looking for feedback. That's all I did. I would launch an offer. If it failed, why did it fail? Oh, did it sell? Why didn't it sell? Because that year I did launch my consulting, but I also was selling products to my email list and trying things, and some of them sold zero, right? I remember launching a workshop and nobody joined, nobody registered, and I believe it was only $50, and it was my first paid workshop. So I was failing a lot, and I was learning really fast. What works? What does my audience care about? All of these things. So you're never going to feel 100% ready ever. So you just have to take action. And just full transparency, even with this new series I'm doing, Asset Creators, that you're watching right now, I was nervous to start this, right? I don't know. Even before I clicked go live right now, I was nervous. My heart rate was up, but I'm still doing it. So I think this is something that it's going to stick with you forever if you really want to make progress and push your comfort zone. But for me this year, in 2024, when I made my first 100K, this was so big for me because I'll say it one more time. If I waited until I was ready, I would still be sitting here telling you that I want to make my first 100K. I wouldn't have made it. So that's what I got for you today. I really want to share those 3 big lessons with you. Please, if you have any feedback on how this is going, if you're enjoying these, not enjoying these, if there's something you want me to cover, let me know, because, it's pretty cool that we're on the 6th episode already. It's been flying by. Episode 7 is going to be tomorrow. Next week, I'm going to be having some people on the show. So I'm really excited about that and just seeing how this is going to build and transform. So if there's anything you want me to cover or whatever, let me know. Other than that, thanks so much for tuning in. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next episode.